Hey everyone, it's Types, and there is currently one deck in the post-rotation metagame that is just destroying the metagame, and if you've been paying attention to the Pokemon DCG, you probably know what it is, right? And if you were certainly paying attention to the title or thumbnail before you click on this video, you know what it is. It is Dragapult, right? Looking at the recent Champions League, or relatively recent Champions League tournament in Japan, which isn't the post-rotation format, Dragapult, I don't know, like, if dominate is quite the right word, but it's, something like that. It's, out of the top 32, or I think 31. I don't know. There's like a missing deck. There's actually a missing deck and some missing deck lists. So we're not taking a look at all the Dragapult lists here. We're not looking at this one because it's not here. But Dragapult is doing super well post rotation. Clearly being the best deck in the format, and this is something that shouldn't be super surprising, right? Looking at the pre-rotation metagame, Dragapult is arguably the best deck in the format, and it's arguable between that and a few different decks, but the other decks are rotating that are very, very good. So, Dragapult being the best deck post-rotation makes just a ton of sense. Also, I am still a little sick, so sorry if the voice or my mic sounds a little bad. That is why, but I am mostly better. But anyways, Dragapult is super powerful. Of course, what does this card do? And we'll hop into some lists here, looking at each of the I think 9 lists from the tournament that we're gonna see here, and taking a look at what they do. But obviously, they are built around Dragapult EX, a really powerful Pokemon. It is a Terra. It is, of course, a Dragon Stage 2 with the attack Phantom Dive for Fire Psychic. You do 200, put 6 damage counters on your opponent's bench, Pokemon in any way you like. This is good damage to the active, right? 200 is not broken, but it's quite good. Then 6 damage counters on your opponent's bench in any way you like is also quite nice. Letting you really mess with your opponent's bench, and there's not really much of a way to stop this. There are like some ways to kind of stop it. There's synergy to style effects, which do exist, but they're a commitment of a special energy there, which is generally something that most decks aren't really able to do. But ultimately, you're relying on the active and the bench damage, as well as damage from some other sources. And with Dragapult EX, one thing that is very meaningful to talk about, obviously it's very good. And one of the better, I guess, counters, not a true counter though, but like a pseudo counter, is going to be Monkey-Dory, allowing you to move damage counters off your bench Pokemon, or off of your Pokemon up to 3 from 1 to one of your opponent's Pokemon there, right? So that's going to be healing and extra damage, which is nice, and potentially very important against a deck like Dragapult that's doing spread damage to your bench, because this allows you to not get your board kind of wiped out by a handful of spread attacks there. And we will see Monkey-Dory in, I think, all these lists here today, or at least most of them. That being said, Dragapult EX, as I said, doesn't really lose too many pieces. It does lose Iono, which we will talk about, and Iono is good for Dragapult EX. But on top of that, it is also losing Luminous Energy, so playing Monkey-Dory will be a bigger commitment, but potentially with more upside as well. Of course, with the rotation, if you're not familiar with the rotation, it's the loss of the oldest years with the cards from the format in the standard format. So that's going to be the first year of Scarlet and Violet there. And as I said, there was like Luminous Energy, Iono, there's stuff like Professor's Research, and a wide variety of powerful different cards rotating. So pretty much in general, the format will get weaker, because the decks is just losing cards. And then that means that the power level will be a little lower. For example, we're losing Goldingo EX, so being one shot is going to be less common. So again, that helps a Monkey-Dory there as well. But then we just have some really interesting things to take a look at. There is, of course, the Dragapult as well, which I haven't talked about yet in this video. Dragapult is also very important to Dragapult EX. Dragapult EX is more important than Dragapult is, I'd say, but Dragapult is still a really important piece. Letting you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one to your hand, and the other on the bottom of your deck every single turn. Funnily enough, I believe this is by far the main way to get cards on the bottom of your deck post-rotation with the rotation of Iono. Not that that really matters, but I guess do keep that in mind for sequencing plays from time to time. As I said, it's not a super common thing, but keep in mind when you shuffle your deck, the cards are on the bottom now get shuffled in, especially changing some odds here and there, which can be worth paying attention to. Though, as I said, it doesn't really matter that commonly. But Dragapult is very good and allows you to play a slower game plan and set up. And Dragapult EX also itself kind of likes a bit of a slower game, not like the slowest game around, but you can definitely sit behind your Pokemon like, say, Badoo, and then set up with Dracloak, and then get energy on your board because your attack is like kind of expensive in terms of being a stage 2 and also being 2 energy of different types. So Dracloak is important for that. But anyways, looking at the first list here, you see that it's running a 3-3-2 Dragapult line, no Dusknoir. A few of the lists are running Dusknoir, a good chunk aren't, though. We do see 3 Munkidores, we see 4 Psychics, 3 Fires, 3 Darkness Energies. We also see 2 Latias EXs and 2 Mega Kangaskhan EXs, which is really interesting. We do still see a Fezidipta EX and Dracloaks, and we see 2 Meowth EXs as well, which is really interesting. And Latias EX synergizes with Mega Kangaskhan EX, allowing you to go ahead and, draw some extra cards, which is interesting to see that as a draw engine. Definitely seems a little scary to me to be playing that. Not that it can't be good in terms of extra draw, but we do see Mega Lucario floating around. It's not like it's not Dragapult, but it's pretty good. So leaving many Kangaskhan's on your board is a little scary, but you're not relying on Dusknoir or single prices really anywhere near as much here. We see us running a Shaman, a Badoo, and a Chimpow, as well as, of course, the Bees and Dracloaks there, but it's not running Dusknoir. It's only running 1 Badoo. So it's not relying on single prizes, so give you up 2 prizes versus 3 isn't a huge deal. And then, you're probably, you got like Fezidipta EX and Meowth EX, which are these 2 prize powerful support Pokemon. Also Meowth EX, if you're not familiar, essentially on play from hand, you search for a supporter. And yeah, that is pretty nice. We'll see that card in a lot of different decks, and it is, I made a video going over this whole tournament, actually, in the cards in the different decks. And Meowth EX was one of the standout cards, alongside Unfair Stamp as well. Those are, I'd say, the 2 standout cards from this this tournament and the format as a whole. Unfair Stamp is a card. If you're not familiar, it's an ace spec, obviously, from its pink color. So you can only have 1 ace spec. So this is the ace spec we'll see in all but I believe one of the lists here. So it is pushing out Neo Upper Energy, which I will talk about some as well, I think. But Unfair Stamp says if you were if one of your Pokemon was knocked out last turn, each player shuffles their hand to their deck, then you draw 5, your opponent draws 2. This is really powerful. As I said, we are losing Iono with rotation. Iono is good disruption. Unfair Stamp is honestly like absurd disruption. You could literally, your opponent could be like going turn 1, going second, attack with their like their Soul Rock into your whatever, and then boom, all of a sudden they've just got 2 cards in hand. So yeah, Unfair Stamp is like super, super powerful. And then we also see Liz Clefairy EX as well, which is interesting as obviously a counter to Dragapult EX, with Crispin allowing you to power it up. Crispin is going to be a really important part of the deck, allowing you to get energies onto your board. As I said, you're not running New Upper Energy. You're also not running as much like disruption there, so you need to get going faster and attacking more. And Mega Kangaskhan EX can be an attack option as well, and we see Energy Switch to help with that some, I imagine, as well. So ultimately, you have these options which are interesting to be more aggressive. It is interesting to see though the deck is not running Rare Candy at all, which seems interesting that it doesn't have as much disruption, and it also doesn't have as much. I don't know, I mean, it doesn't have Rare Candy either, and for that like high roll potential. It is, running boss. Obviously no counter catcher that is rotating. It's running Pokebad, 4 Pokebad, 4 Ultra Ball, no Buddy Poffins without, the Duskulls or as many Badoos or things like that, or as many Dreepies. Buddy Poffin is like, not something you're really looking at. Pokebad, though, is good, getting you the cards you're getting off of Buddy Poffin and more. Yes, it's only getting you 1 card, but that's often enough. Especially when it is getting you a wider variety of cards like your Munkidores. And as I said, Munkidori is really important to the deck for getting extra damage around, or I guess it's important within the deck, specifically against the deck as well, as I was saying earlier. It's also interesting to see Cypher Max Codebreaker. I talked about this in a video I just made talking about supporters. I might make other rankings of other card types post-rotation, so tell me in the comment section if you want to see that, and also subscribe so you don't miss those. But Cypher Max Codebreaking with Mega Kangaskhan EX is like interesting, but I don't know. I feel like it's kind of meh. I'm also a little lower on like Dawn, other people, and maybe Rock Scouting, and even Harlequin. Obviously, Disruption, you'll take what you can get. None of the options are super good, but Unfair Stamp's super good. The other ones aren't super good. We also do see Chimpow discarding a Stadium, which is really interesting with Air Zero Underdepths. Didn't expand your bench with Air Zero Underdepths and like get rid of some bench Pokemon with Chimpow to monk the Stadium, which is really interesting to see. I don't know if that's a super regular play pattern. It might be. I'm not sure. But obviously that's really fun, right? Because we are losing scoop up options like Tourist Scenario, so that is really fun to see there. Then we have the next list here. This one does run Dustor. It runs a 2-1-1 line, and then we see a 1-1 Noctowl as well, which is pretty interesting. I don't know, that seems like a little situational, but I mean it is just a 1-1 line, right? So that's pretty interesting to see there. And then we see it is running Risky Ruins here alongside Monkey Door. We also do see Rose's Encouragement to accelerate one Rose's Encouragement, which is 2 from the discard if you're down on prizes, to a stage 2, right? Yeah, so that's going to be like okay there alongside Crispin. I do think Crispin is still better than Rose's Encouragement in the deck, but I could see some situations where Rose's Encouragement would be better. We do see Briar in the list as well. Briar is interesting in Dragapult EX, letting you take you know, an extra prize card if you take a knockout on your opponent's active with a Terra. But then you can only use it obviously if your opponent has exactly 2 prizes remaining, and this is specifically notable with Dustor that it's going to allow you to get to that situation more often, as your opponent will really struggle to play around it, right? Because you can knock yourself out, force them to take prizes, and then into a Briar situation, and that's going to be really sketchy for them. Aside of that, this list definitely looks a lot more like a rotation list. I will say it is interesting that there's 2 Darkness Energies. That definitely seems a little. I don't know. It's interesting. 2 Darkness and only 1 Monkey Dory. Yes, the Darkness Energies do help you with Crispin. I mean, Crispin's not a main part of the game plan. Um, in the same sense as like the list with like 4 Crispin, right? But yeah, 2 Darkness definitely seems a little interesting, like kind of high in my opinion. When I feel like the upside's pretty mediocre. And obviously, it only runs one Monkey Dory and like 1 Crispin, so definitely seems interesting there. But definitely I'd say like a more normal list here, and 4 Lily's Determination as well. Did the other one have 4? I'd only had 2. Oh, yeah, because it ran 4 Crispin, some other supporters, but I do think 4 Lily's Determination most decks seems really logical. We do see 4, by the way, Poffin 4, Ultra Ball 4, Pokepad as well, which is really interesting there. We have the next deck here. This one's pretty, I'd say, streamlined. We see some pretty what I describe as streamlined supporter counts, mostly going for like consistency here. And yeah, the deck seems more consistency focused. We see like the 2 Monkey Dory, 2 Darkness, so like looking to use that to some extent most games. You have Risk Ruins for a little extra damage. It's not being this like focal point of the deck, but it is still a meaningful part of the deck. You see like a 4/4/3 Dragapult line, so pretty thick there. A pretty thick item search, and then less tech cards, which this is like a list I'd say if you're looking for something that's like safe and stable, this checks those boxes. Not running my Hangis Kandi Axis, I'd say, is a pretty, as I said, streamlined is the word I'd use for this deck here. Then we have the next deck. This one's pretty similar as well. It does run Team Rocket's Watchtower. This is definitely an interesting stadium, one that I do think is pretty good. Turning off abilities of colorless Pokemon. Yes, we are losing some in with rotation, but there are still some good ones, including Meowth EX. This will shut down Meowth EX, and that's obviously one of the best Pokemon in the game. Letting you search for, as I said, a supporter on play from hand. By the way, works with Ultra Brawl, which is like nice. Wouldn't have worked with Dusk Ball, but Dusk Ball's rotating anyways. Works with, I guess, Brock Scouting as well, which is like kind of fun. But yeah, this deck is like relatively streamlined here, pretty similar to this one. Some differences. We've got Liz Clefairy EX, and Liz Clefairy EX is good. I will say with Liz Clefairy EX, it doesn't like completely shut down Dragapult. It trades like evenly. Or I guess evenly. Technically, it trades positively with a tool, but people aren't really playing the tool. And they're running Jamming Tower as well. When I say they're not really running the tool, I can't think of like the last time I've seen anyone run it. And then on top of that, you're also like you're taking bench damage at the same time, so that's like kind of scary. So it doesn't trade amazingly. It is a basic. That's like the really good part about it. But in terms of actual trade, it's kind of scary. And then we see 2 Badoos as well. I definitely feel like 2 Badoos seems like right. I mean, 1 Badoo seems like really scary. But then we have the next list here. This one is another Dustor list. This one I think I kind of like being again pretty streamlined, but going towards the Dustor, having to cut some other stuff to make room for the Dustor. Looks, as I said, relatively similar to a pre-rotation list. We got like Dawn here. We do see the Briar and 2 Meowth EX to be able to find the Briar. Briar is powerful but situational. But like, it's definitely a card that is very good if you can search it out at the time which you need it, and you can get to that situation, which the Dust Storm plus Meowth EX, those allow you to, really get there, I think, a lot of the time. So definitely interesting there. Then we have this next list here. This one's also interesting, running a Wellspring Mass Ogre Pontiacs. Okay, I didn't realize. So this list is running Wellspring Mass Ogre Pontiacs with Air Zero Underdepths, which is interesting. I'm not actually 100% sure of the use cases of Wellspring Mass Ogre Pontiacs. I mean, it allows you to turn the stadium on, which seems like fine. I guess it gives you more bench space for Meowth EX, but you can't really like bump this. I mean, you can bump it with Jamming Tower to like get rid of liabilities, but like you're not running the Chimp here. And then I guess you can use it to like trap, which is like something, but it doesn't seem that useful. I guess we are losing as I said, the scoop up supporters, so your opponent will struggle to switch more. We're losing Jet Energy as well, if you know me. I think Jet Energy is like kind of overrated, but definitely something you can go for, but also not really something you can capitalize on hugely. Like it can get you back into the game to get energy on your board, but that's like about it, right? Like you're not using Dust Wars, you're not using Briar, you're not using like I guess you could use Monkey Dory to kind of heal off a bunch as well, but that seems a little unlikely. I guess that is possible though. That might be a big part of the idea there, which is interesting. You also get more bench space for like Monkey Dories, which is like kind of cool though. I don't think it's super important, but I definitely do like the idea of Air Zero Under Depths with like bumping the stadium. That seems really cool and potentially really good. Then we have the next list here. This one is another Dust Storm list. We actually, one of my favorite cards, Blowtorch. Actually, I really like this list here. Blowtorch, if you're not familiar, it's an item letting you discard a fire energy, or I guess make you discard a fire energy from your hand. Then you discard a tool, special energy, or stadium. The stadium could be yours. The other ones can't. And yeah, this is a really cool card. I'm allowing you to counter a wide variety of different things. Speaking of special energy, I guess now is as good a time as any to talk about the special energy situation. And yeah, I mean, as I said, there's no Luminous Energy, and there's not really any new Upper Energy because people are playing Unfair Stamp. I'm wondering how good new Upper Energy would be. I will mention, I do like Sparkling Crystal, which I think one list is running Sparkling Crystal, but we don't have Arven, right? So you can't search it out super easily. You can search it out with like Noctowl, or I don't know. You can search it out with Noctowl, right? You can get it with Noctowl. That's like a thing. But ultimately, I do think that that new upper energy is interesting, specifically with Hilda, and I've talked about this a bunch, where I do like the idea of Telefast Psychic Energy within the deck, allowing you to accelerate, or not accelerate, but like get some Pokemon to play at some situations. It's not super powerful, not super versatile. Um, but I mean, a lot of the time it'll just be a psychic. It's not a basic, so you can't Night Stretcher and you can't Crispin it. Not be able to Crispin it, I don't think is the end of the world. If you got like a bunch of them, a bunch of energies, and you just have like one or two Telefast Psychic energies. And with Hilda, you can then search it out when you need it. Obviously, Hilda, you realistically are only going to be running with new Upper Energy though. So, I'm wondering about that. I was gonna like test it at some point. I haven't really tested for this format. Obviously the cards aren't out yet, right? So I couldn't just like play with it on live. That'll be in a few weeks, but I do think that idea is interesting there, but that's not what we've really seen yet. Then we have yeah, nothing else super crazy here. We got like T-Rocket's Petrol. T-Rocket's Petrol is, I guess, the Arven replacement. Not that that really matters for Dragapult, but it lets you search any trainer, which again is searchable off of Meowth. You can use Meowth to either get a full evolution line, you can use it to get two basics, you can use it to get like a stadium or an item or whatever. So it can get you like anything, which is really interesting. Interesting, there's only two Ultra Balls as well. I guess you're, setting up your board like you would with a regular Dragapult deck first. Then we have this dex list here. This one runs actually a Psyduck, of course, countering Dusknoir there, which there has been some Psyduck, right? Psyduck counters Dusknoir. There is no Klefki, no more Klefki as well, which is interesting to note, meaning that it's harder to counter Psyduck. And then, yeah, obviously the deck's not running Dusknoir either. Psyduck does turn off your own Dusknoir. And then, this allows you to, be better against the Dusknoir Dragapult decks, which are potentially really scary, and we see Shaman as well here. Nothing like super crazy going on, but I figured those cards were interesting to note there. Then we have the last deck here. This one's pretty interesting, running the Knockdown line, like a full Knockdown line, and 3 Wellspring Mass Ogre Pontiacs being like a really key part of the game plan there. I'm not gonna lie, the 1 water, I mean, the energy counts are like kind of scaring me in general. They're pretty low. You do have Sparkling Crystal though, so with Sparkling Crystal, theoretically, you should be in a really good spot. You can like, Torrential Pump a bunch, which is really interesting there. Definitely seems a little scary, like things can go wrong. I have played Knocked Out Dragapult. I think it's a really fun deck, but definitely gets pretty scary at times as well, with a lot of pieces moving around and things could go badly. But definitely an interesting deck here. This I honestly wouldn't say is pushing things too far. Um, you're running like some pretty thick lines. So in terms of consistency, it shouldn't be too bad. As I said, it's pushing into the energies, but that's about it. Ultimately, I think this deck list does seem interesting to me. Um, there was a while at which people were playing a lot of Dragapult Knocked Owl, and that's like cooled off some. I think it was one of those like cooler things to play. That was kind of new, but people have stopped doing that. So we'll see where that ends up. But anyways, tell me down below in the comment section what your thoughts are on Dragapult and post rotation in general. But I am excited for post rotation. I mean, I know some people don't like the deck, but I think it has some interesting gameplay patterns. And we are seeing a lot of unfair stamp as well. So be aware of that. Make sure you don't like go super aggressive into all sorts of decks and just get like super punished. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell, all the good stuff. That really helps support me and the channel. But I hope you enjoyed. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.